Welcome back to Slow Living. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a little macrame wall hanging out of an old t-shirt or some general household string like this. Currently, I'm in Melbourne, Australia, where we are under stage 4 restrictions for 6 weeks because of the virus that shall not be named. And that means that I can only leave the house for 1 hour a day for exercise or to get essential groceries or other essential items, and that's only within a 5-kilometer radius of my house. So it was really important that the sort of little projects that I'm going to do in these next few videos, I should say, are going to require minimal equipment or materials, things that we can actually find around the house and that we can upcycle and use that way. So I hope that this is helpful. I wanted to try and help any parents out there who might have kids at home, because I cannot imagine having the kids home 24/7 and having to entertain them and sort of guide them through online learning and that kind of thing. So this particular project, the macrame hangers, is probably more suitable for secondary aged kids, although you could be surprised, your child could be brilliant, and it would also be suitable for adults as well. I found these projects pretty fun, actually. It's nice to get your hands busy to do something that's hands-on and not tech related to help pass the time. So I hope you enjoy this video, and hopefully I'll have a few more coming up too to keep you occupied. Let's get started.
Okay, so now you will need something to hang your wall hanging off. So something to sort of tie all the string to. That could be a coat hanger or an awl or like a disposable chopstick, something that is long and thin. Now you're going to need some sort of string. So you could use regular household string like this. I just found that lying around. You can also get this craft tee, which is like t-shirt yarn, but of course you'll have to purchase that and wait for it to be delivered or whatever. So I'm going to show you how to make your own. I didn't actually have an old t-shirt that I wanted to cut up, so I'm just going to use this bit of fabric that I have lying around, and I'll show you how to make the yarn from that. You will also need some fabric scissors, because we're going to cut your old t-shirt or your fabric remnant, whatever you have to make this yarn. You're going to need some scissors to do that. Okay, so get your fabric or your t-shirt, whatever it is, and lie it down flat on the table. You want it to be nice and flat so that you can cut it as easily as possible. We're going to cut it into about 1-inch strips. So let's pretend the t-shirt is lying flat and you're starting from the bottom. So the hem of the t-shirt, you're going to start cutting upwards like this. And then you're basically just going to keep cutting strips 1 inch thick. You can go a little bit thinner if you like, but when you pull it out, it will get thinner. And you'll see here that as we pull it out, the string gets nice and skinny to replicate a yarn. Basically, you just keep pulling it out like that until the whole strip is nice and long and skinny and it resembles yarn, and then you're ready to go. Now, depending on the size of your t-shirt, that will really dictate how long each of your strips of yarn are. Just keep going until you get as much yarn as you can. Now, at this point, I'm trying to shape the hanger into something that resembles something aesthetically pleasing, and it's just not working because it just doesn't look great. So look, if you don't have an awl or you don't have a chopstick, just use a hanger because you can use it to practice. Kids obviously won't really mind. You can just use it, and maybe if you'd like to make a nicer looking macrame later on, this can be your practice run. Okay, at this point I was about to cut this, but luckily I didn't. You want to end up with 8 pieces of yarn or multiples of 4. So if you only have 4 long pieces, that's fine. If you have 12, roll with that. There's a bit of flexibility there. It'll just have to be a multiple of 4 because that's the type of knot that we're going to use to do the design. So once you've got your 8 pieces, grab your dowel or your coat hanger and grab 1 piece of yarn and have it folded in half, as I do. Make sure that it's nice and even, so fold it exactly in half. And now I have no idea how to describe how to do this knot, so maybe if you just watch the visual, that'll give you way better instructions on how to do it. Basically, you fold that little loop over the dowel and then you pop the other lengths through the loop and then pull it nice and tight. You basically want to do this for all of your pieces of yarn until all 8 or all of them are on the dowel. When they're all on, you can just make sure they're spaced out evenly so you've got enough room on either side of the dowel. And then you want to flip it over because I think this side of the knots actually looks neater before you stick it down on the table with some masking tape or sticky tape, whatever you've got. You can also hang it, but I guess I just found it easier on the table. Now make sure that all your pieces of yarn are sort of in order. You want them nice and neat because we're going to work our way from left to right. Now we're going to use those left 4 pieces of yarn. Fold it over like this. Again, it's really hard to describe, so try and look at the visual and follow that. Basically, you fold over the left one, and then with the far right one, you make sure it loops over that little loop that you just made, and then under the 2 middle pieces of yarn, and then up through the little loop on the left. Now, half the trick is getting everything to stay nice and neat as you pull everything through. So here I'm pulling it through nice and slow so that you can see. And then as you tighten the strings, they'll want to move. So try and use any spare fingers you have to hold down those middle ones as you pull it tight. And now we're basically going to do the same thing, but with the one on the right. So with the far right piece of yarn in that little group of 4, loop it over, and now find the end of the far left piece. Make sure that it goes over that initial loop. I accidentally put it under here. Go over and then under those 2 middle pieces and then up through that loop on the right. And again, pull it through nice and slow. And voila, you would have done your first little macrame sequence of knots. Now this is the same knot sequence that we're going to use throughout the entire thing. Of course, there are heaps of variations you can do. So if you want to get carried away, just YouTube macrame knots and things, and you can really get lost in that. There's like a deep rabbit hole to be explored there. So have fun with that. Otherwise, just stick to some basic stuff. If you've got younger kids, you can just do some, basic knotting instead of technical knotting, and just let them go a bit wild with it, really. Let them get creative. So now, as you'll see, we're just going to work our way all the way across until that top row is complete. Now on this next row, what we're going to do, after you make sure that all your rope is in order and nice and neat, is we're going to bring those 2 far left and 2 far right pieces of yarn up out of the way. Sorry, I keep knocking the tripod, which is why the camera keeps moving like that and giving everyone inertia. Apologies. And now we're basically going to do the same thing. So again, you can play around with different patterns. The way that you sort of take away yarn and then put it back in will change the pattern of your macrame. So have some fun with it. In this next row, again, I'm going to take away those 2 I was going to say lateral and medial, the 2 far left and then the 2 far right, and then repeat the same process again. And I'm going to do that one more time until I've got this 1 knot in the middle. And then I'm going to sort of reverse it. So instead of taking away those 2 left and 2 right yarns, I'm going to bring them back in. This is going to sort of create the pattern of the macrame in the opposite direction, as you'll see. You might find that your yarn is getting short, especially if you used a t-shirt, because your length of yarn would be shorter than mine. So this will really dictate how sort of long your macrame is going to end up being. But that's okay, sort of just roll with it, use what you have. That's part of the beauty of it, and just have a play. I think the part that I found most difficult is trying to get the tension right. So you obviously don't want to tie your knots way too tight. See how there are those bits on the side that they add to the detail of the macrame. So you sort of want to let them breathe, if that makes sense. You don't want to tie the knots so tight that there's no detail, but you also don't want to tie them too loose, because then, I don't know, it could still look fine, but it might not look like a macrame. Here I'm just going to keep going until you can see that pattern starting to form in the middle, which is kind of satisfying. Sometimes it could look like just like a big mess, and you just kind of have to trust the process sometimes. Make sure that you're always working left to right, and then you can kind of keep track of how you're going. When you're done, just cut off the bottom bits of the yarn so that it's nice and even. You can do it in a shape like I've done, or you can do it straight across, whatever tickles your fancy. Now the last thing to do is to put a little bit of string at the top so that you can actually hang it somewhere. If you've done it on a coat hanger, of course you won't have to do that. But there you go. We are done with our macrame wall hanger. It's pretty cute.
So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that you're staying safe and occupied during this crazy time. Take care of yourself, and do show me if you took on this project. I would love to see your finished product. You can find me here, of course, and on Instagram at Slew Living, and that's slow with an E. Until next time. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed, oh gosh,